The sound of paper tearing echoed louder than anything else in Terminal 3 of O'Hare International Airport. My son-in-law Brandon stood there holding the shredded remains of my boarding pass. With that smug grin he always wore. The kind men flash when they think a suit and tie make them king of the world. He dropped the pieces right there on the polished floor like they were trash, like I was trash. And then he said those words I'll never forget: "You're too old for this trip, Margaret. Someone needs to stay at the Georgetown house and take care of the dogs. My purebred German shepherds need their medication, and I don't trust anyone else with them." But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. I'm Margaret Caldwell, 66 years old. For 30 years, I was a chief auditor at the Treasury Department. I buried my husband Robert 4 years ago after a massive heart attack at our ranch in rural Virginia. Brandon thinks I'm just some grandmother whose only purpose is warming up leftovers and babysitting. But he forgot one crucial detail. I train the best financial investigators this country has ever seen. I know how to read fine print, and I definitely know how to follow the money. It all started 3 months earlier with a promise from my daughter Jessica. She came to visit me on a Sunday afternoon at the Georgetown townhouse, the one I inherited from my parents back when the neighborhood was just becoming fashionable. We sat in the sunroom overlooking the garden, and she took my hands in hers with tears in her eyes. "Mom," she said, her voice soft and pleading, "let's go see the Christmas lights in New York City. You've been locked up in this house since Dad died. The kids have never seen Rockefeller Center at Christmas, never ice skated in Central Park. Let's make some memories together." My heart melted right there. The thought of my grandchildren Tyler and Emma seeing the massive Christmas tree, their little faces lit up with wonder, their laughter echoing through the snowy streets of Manhattan. I wanted that so badly I could taste it. I wanted to feel alive again, to be part of my family's joy instead of sitting alone in this big empty house, with only memories for company. So I paid for everything. Business class tickets on United Airlines for all 5 of us, a luxury suite at the Plaza Hotel overlooking Central Park, reservations at the finest restaurants in the city, Broadway show tickets, the works. I put it all on my American Express card, funded by my federal pension and the successful real estate investments Robert left me. The total came to over $30,000, but I didn't care. You can't put a price on family, or so I thought. Brandon was always what my mother would have called all hat and no cattle. He drove a black Cadillac Escalade that I bought him when his construction company went belly up 3 years ago. He lived in my Georgetown townhouse rent-free because Jessica begged me to let them stay, just until they got back on their feet. That was 5 years ago. In his mind, though, he was the man of the house, the provider, the one in charge. He'd strut around my property like he owned it, making decisions about my gardens, my furniture, my life. That morning at O'Hare, we'd all driven up from DC together in my Escalade. The plan was to fly out of Chicago because I'd scored an incredible deal on the flights, and we were going to make a quick stopover to visit my sister in Evanston before heading to New York. But when we got to the airport, something felt off. Jessica was quiet, wouldn't meet my eyes. Brandon kept checking his phone and smirking. The kids seemed confused, asking their mother why Grandma looked sad. We got to the check-in counter, and that's when Brandon made his move. He literally snatched my boarding pass right out of my hand before I could even process what was happening. The agent had just printed it, handed it to me with a smile, and Brandon's hand shot out like a snake striking. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharp with confusion and rising anger. That's when he tore it. Slowly, deliberately, making sure I watched every second of it. The sound of that paper ripping apart felt like something inside me was tearing too. He let the pieces flutter to the ground like confetti at some twisted celebration. "You're too old for this trip, Margaret," he repeated, his voice dripping with fake concern that made my skin crawl. "The walking, the cold weather, the excitement, it's too much stress for someone your age. Besides, someone responsible needs to stay at the house. My dogs need their medication on schedule. They're worth more than most people make in a year, and I won't trust them with some random pet sitter." I looked at Jessica, waiting for her to defend me, to tell her husband he was out of line. She was my daughter. Surely she'd stand up for her own mother. But Jessica just stared at the floor, her face flushed with shame, and then she whispered the words that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. "Mom, Brandon's right. You'll just get tired and slow us down. It's better if you stay home. You can give the dogs their pills and water my plants. We'll bring you back a souvenir." The way she said it, so casual, like I was hired help instead of the woman who gave birth to her, who raised her, who paid for her wedding and bailed out her worthless husband more times than I could count. Brandon handed me the keys to my own Escalade with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Take an Uber back to Georgetown, Margaret. Don't ruin our vacation with your complaining. They turned toward the gate, laughing together about something on Brandon's phone, already forgetting I existed. Tyler and Emma waved at me uncertainly, confused by the adult tension they could sense but not understand. And in that moment, watching them walk away from me like I was nothing, something inside me shifted. The sadness and shock transformed into something cold and sharp and absolutely clear. Brandon had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He underestimated a woman who spent 3 decades hunting down tax cheats and corporate fraudsters. He forgot that I don't just read fine print, I write it. I didn't walk toward the exit like a defeated old woman shuffling home to an empty house. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked straight to the United Airlines customer service desk with the same confident stride I used when I walked into boardrooms to shut down billion-dollar schemes. The young woman behind the counter looked up with a professional smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" I placed both hands on the counter and looked her dead in the eye with the same expression I used to wear when closing cases that sent executives to federal prison. "Good morning. I'm Margaret Caldwell, the primary card holder for reservation confirmation GH7X to M. I need to cancel this entire booking for 5 passengers immediately, and I need written confirmation that the cancellation came from me. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day, but YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you." The agent's fingers flew across her keyboard, and I watched the screen flicker as she pulled up the reservation. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw the total value. "Ma'am, this is a significant booking. Business class tickets, hotel package, the complete New York experience bundle. Are you absolutely certain you want to cancel? The penalties will be substantial." "I'm the one who paid for it," I said calmly. "Every single penny came from my account. And yes, I want it canceled. All of it. Right now." She nodded slowly, perhaps sensing this was not a decision made lightly or one she should question further. Her fingers clicked across the keys, and I watched with satisfaction as the reservation status changed from confirmed to canceled. Within 90 seconds, 5 boarding passes became worthless pieces of digital nothing. But I didn't stop there. While she printed my confirmation paperwork, I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to my attorney, Harold Weissman, who'd handled my affairs since Robert died. He answered on the second ring. "Harold, it's Margaret. I need you to execute Plan B." "Yes, the one we discussed last month. Today. Right now. I want the locks changed to the Georgetown property within 2 hours, and I want the restraining order paperwork ready for filing. Also, contact the bank and have them cancel the supplementary credit card under Brandon Mitchell's name. Report it as unauthorized use." "Yes, I'm sure. Call me when it's done." The second call was to Premium Pet Care in Arlington, the luxury boarding facility where I'd secretly made arrangements 3 days earlier. Something in my gut had told me to have a backup plan, and my instincts from decades of investigation work rarely failed me. "This is Margaret Caldwell. I'm activating the emergency pickup for my 2 German Shepherds at the Georgetown address." "Yes, use the key I provided. They're in the backyard kennel. Pick them up within the hour. Keep them in your presidential suite for the next 2 weeks." "Yes, I know it's expensive. Charge my account." You're probably wondering why I had a backup plan ready. The truth is, I've been watching Brandon and Jessica for months, seeing the way they looked at me, the way they whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. I caught snippets of conversations about when the old lady finally kicks it, and that Georgetown property is worth at least $3 million. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know it would be this blatant, this cruel, this stupid. See, Brandon thought he was clever. He thought by keeping me home, by humiliating me in public, he was establishing dominance, showing me my place in the family hierarchy. What he didn't understand is that I'd spent 30 years dealing with men exactly like him, arrogant, entitled, short-sighted men who thought they were smarter than everyone else right up until the moment the handcuffs clicked shut. After Robert died, I'd been in a fog of grief for about a year. I barely left the house. I let Jessica and Brandon move in because the place felt too empty, without Robert's laughter filling the rooms, without his terrible jokes at breakfast, without his hand reaching for mine while we watched the evening news. They'd sold their own house during Brandon's business troubles, claiming they needed to regroup and rebuild, and I'd welcomed them with open arms because they were family. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was paying off Brandon's business debts when the construction company collapsed. $60,000 I gave them, telling myself it was helping my daughter, helping my grandchildren. Brandon had promised to pay me back with interest once he got another job, once things turned around. That was 3 years ago, and I hadn't seen a single dollar. The third mistake was co-signing the car loan for the Escalade when Brandon's credit was destroyed. Of course, after 6 months he stopped making payments, so I ended up covering those too. Eventually, I just paid off the entire loan myself to stop the harassment from the dealership. But I'd been smart enough to keep the title in my name only. That decision was about to pay off in ways Brandon never saw coming. The fourth mistake was a big one though, letting them talk me into adding their names to the house title. Jessica had cried, saying she just wanted security for her children, wanted to know they'd always have a home. She brought the paperwork from some lawyer friend of Brandon's, and in my grief-stricken state, I'd almost signed it, almost. But 30 years of professional paranoia made me take the documents to Harold first. Margaret, Harold had said, pushing his reading glasses up his nose and fixing me with that stern look he usually reserved for opposing counsel. This document isn't adding them to your title. This is transferring your property into a trust where you're a lifetime beneficiary, but they become the actual owners upon your death. You'd be signing away your home. Don't do this. I didn't sign. But that's when I realized what kind of game was being played. That's when I started paying attention to the whispered conversations, the way Brandon looked at my jewelry collection, the way Jessica inventoried my antiques when she thought I was napping. That's when I hired a private investigator and discovered Brandon had been showing my house to real estate agents, getting appraisals, planning his future on my property. The investigator's report showed Brandon had even contacted developers about tearing down my historic Georgetown townhouse to build a modern condo complex. My home, the house my grandparents built in 1928, the place where I grew up, where I married Robert, where I raised Jessica, he wanted to bulldoze it for profit. That's when Harold and I created Plan B. We structured it as a personal loan to Jessica with the house as collateral. She'd signed it during one of Brandon's business crises, desperate for money to cover his debts. The terms were simple, monthly payments of $500, or the property would revert entirely to me with immediate eviction rights. For 2 years, I never mentioned the payments. I let them slide because they were family, but I kept records. Oh, did I keep records? Every missed payment documented, every email promising to catch up next month, every text message from Jessica making excuses. I had a file 3 inches thick of their broken promises. And now, sitting in that airport coffee shop with a perfect view of the United Airlines gates, I was about to use every page of it. I sipped my overpriced latte and waited for the show to begin. The first sign of trouble came about 20 minutes later. I watched from my strategic position in the coffee shop as Brandon, Jessica, and the kids approached the gate agent for boarding. Tyler was dragging a small rolling suitcase covered in superhero stickers. Emma clutched a stuffed elephant. They both looked excited, bouncing on their toes with that beautiful childhood energy that knows nothing about the ugliness of adult betrayal. The gate agent scanned Brandon's phone, and I saw her smile fade. She scanned Jessica's phone. Same result. She said something to them, gesturing at her computer screen from 50 feet away. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the body language perfectly. Brandon's posture shifted from casual confidence to aggressive defensiveness in about 3 seconds flat. He started pointing at his phone, then at the departure board, his voice rising loud enough that other passengers turned to look. The gate agent remained professionally calm, but I could see her picking up the phone, probably calling a supervisor. Jessica's face had gone pale, and she was frantically tapping at her phone, likely trying to pull up the confirmation emails that no longer existed. That's when Brandon pulled out his wallet and produced the American Express card I'd given him 2 years ago. It was technically a supplementary card on my account, issued in his name for family emergencies. He'd used it for everything from bar tabs to sports memorabilia, to expensive dinners at steakhouses, where he played big shot for his contractor buddies. I'd ignored it because I was stupid and grieving and trying to keep my family together. That card was now a useless piece of plastic. I watched him hand it to the agent with that cocky swagger of his, probably saying something about how he'd just rebooked the flights, how there must be some computer error. She swiped it, waited, and then her face did that thing customer service workers' faces do when they have to deliver bad news. She shook her head, handed the card back, and pointed to something on her screen. Brandon's face went from annoyed to confused to furious in the span of about 5 seconds. He grabbed the card, stared at it like it had personally betrayed him, then pulled out his phone and started jabbing at it violently. He was probably trying to check the account online, only to discover that his access had been revoked an hour ago. Jessica was crying now, mascara starting to run, while Tyler and Emma clung to her legs asking what was wrong. Why weren't they getting on the plane? Where was Grandma? That part hurt my heart, but I pushed the feeling down. Sometimes you have to break things completely before you can rebuild them the right way. A security officer appeared. Summoned by the gate agent who was clearly dealing with an increasingly hostile passenger. Brandon was yelling now, causing a scene, attracting attention from everyone in the terminal. I pulled out my phone and opened the video recorder, documenting everything. You never know when evidence might come in handy. That's when Brandon spotted me. His eyes locked onto mine across the terminal, and I watched understanding dawn on his face like a sunrise made of pure rage. He started walking toward me, leaving Jessica sobbing with the kids, his face red and his fists clenched. The security officer followed him, speaking into his radio. I set my coffee down carefully and stood up, smoothing my blouse. I'd worn my best professional outfit today, not for the trip I wasn't taking, but for the confrontation I knew was coming. Navy blue suit, pearl necklace, sensible heels. The armor of a woman who'd spent decades in rooms full of powerful men, who underestimated her right up until she destroyed them. Brandon stormed up to my table, breathing hard, his face so close to mine I could smell the coffee on his breath. What the hell did you do? He hissed through clenched teeth. The tickets are canceled. My card doesn't work. Fix this right now, you crazy old bat. The security officer stepped closer, hand on his radio. I gave him a calm nod that said I had this under control, then turned my full attention to Brandon. When I spoke, my voice was quiet, steady, and cold as ice. The trip is canceled, Brandon. Permanently. And that's just the beginning. What are you talking about? Uncancel it. Those are my kids. They've been looking forward to this for months. You can't just, your kids. I interrupted, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. You mean the grandchildren you just used as an excuse to humiliate me? To tear up my boarding pass and send me home like a servant? Those kids? You're being dramatic. I just thought you'd be more comfortable at home, and someone needed to watch the dogs. The dogs are at a luxury pet resort in Arlington. They're being pampered in a suite that costs more per night than most hotel rooms. They're fine. His face went pale. What? How did you broke into my house? Your house? I let that hang in the air for a moment. Brandon, let me explain something to you very clearly. You don't have a house. The Georgetown property is mine. It was always mine. The Escalade you've been driving, also mine. The credit card you just tried to use, mine. Everything you thought you had? It's all mine, and I'm taking it back. You can't do that. Jessica's name is on a loan document where she used my property as collateral, a loan she hasn't paid a single installment on in 24 months. I have an attorney filing foreclosure paperwork as we speak. Jessica had wandered over with the kids, drawn by the commotion. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face, and for a moment I saw my little girl again. The one who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares, who believed her mother could fix anything. Mom, please, she whispered. The kids will survive without a vacation to New York, I said firmly. What they won't survive is growing up watching their father treat their grandmother like garbage, and their mother standing by letting it happen. That's the real lesson here, Jessica. Brandon grabbed for my arm, but the security officer moved fast, stepping between us with a hand up in warning. Sir, I need you to step back right now. This is family business. Brandon shouted. She can't just cancel our trip and steal our stuff, her stuff, I corrected, calmly, pulling out my phone, and I can prove ownership of everything. Would you like to see the titles, the registration, the bank statements? If you want to know how the story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free and it helps me a lot. The security officer looked between us, clearly trying to assess the situation. Brandon was still fuming, his face red and his hands shaking with rage. Jessica looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. Tyler and Emma were crying now, confused and scared by all the yelling. I took a deep breath and addressed the security officer directly. My name is Margaret Caldwell. This man, I gestured to Brandon, tore up my boarding pass about an hour ago and told me I was too old to travel. He intended to take a $30,000 vacation that I fully funded while leaving me home to watch his dogs. I've canceled the booking, which was entirely in my name and paid for with my credit card. I've also canceled the supplementary card I'd given him. Everything I've done is within my legal rights. The officer nodded slowly, then turned to Brandon. Sir, if she's a card holder, and the booking was in her name, she has every right to cancel it. I'm going to need you to calm down or I'll have to ask you to leave the terminal. She's destroying my family. Brandon shouted, but his voice had lost some of its power. Reality was starting to sink in. I'm saving my family, I corrected quietly. From you? That's when my phone rang. It was Harold. I answered it on speaker so everyone could hear. Margaret, it's done. The locks have been changed at the Georgetown property. I've had a courier deliver a notice to vacate to the premises, which means anyone inside has 2 hours to remove personal belongings before they're legally trespassing. The restraining order paperwork is filed and should be processed within 24 hours. The Escalade has been reported to the towing company and should be impounded within the hour. And the bank confirms all supplementary cards are cancelled. You're all clear. Thank you, Harold, I said calmly, then ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening. Brandon looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Jessica's crying intensified, turning into those horrible gasping sobs that shook her whole body. The kids were wailing now, caught up in the emotion even if they didn't understand the details. You locked us out? Jessica finally managed to gasp. We have nowhere to go. You have 2 hours to get your essential belongings, I said, keeping my voice steady even though watching my daughter's pain was tearing me apart inside. After that, anything left becomes part of the property seizure for loan default. I'd suggest you hurry. This is insane, Brandon shouted, apparently finding his voice again. You can't just throw us out on the street. We have children. I'll sue you for everything you have. I pulled out a manila folder from my bag. Yes, I brought documentation to the airport because I knew this confrontation was coming and handed it to him. That's a copy of the loan agreement your wife signed. Page 3, paragraph 7. In the event of payment default, the property owner has the right to immediate foreclosure and eviction. Page 5, paragraph 2. Both parties agree that the property cannot be occupied without written consent. If payments are more than 60 days overdue, you're 730 days overdue, Brandon. I've been lenient. That leniency ends today. He flipped through the papers, his hands shaking, looking for some loophole, some escape hatch. There wasn't one. Harold and I had spent weeks making sure every detail was ironclad. You planned this, he finally said, his voice hollow. You planned this whole thing. No. I corrected him. I prepared for the possibility that you might show your true character. You're the one who actually did this. You chose to humiliate me, to exclude me, to treat me like hired help in my own home. I just decided I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. Jessica grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in desperately. Mom, please. I know Brandon was wrong. I know I should have defended you. But please don't do this. We'll pay you back, I swear. We'll make it right. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw something I'd been trying to ignore for years. She'd stopped being the strong, independent woman I'd raised. Somewhere along the way, she'd become a shell of herself, always deferring to Brandon, always making excuses for him, always putting his comfort above her own dignity and her mother's well-being. Jessica, you've been promising to make things right for 3 years, I said softly, removing her hand from my arm. You promised to pay back the $60,000 for Brandon's business debts. You promised to make the loan payments. You promised you'd only stay in my house for 6 months. You promised Brandon would get a job and contribute. Every single promise has been broken. I tried, Mom. No. I cut her off, but gently. You didn't try. You enabled. You let him turn you into someone who sides with her husband when he humiliates her own mother. You let him convince you that I'm too old, too much trouble, too inconvenient. And worst of all, you're teaching Tyler and Emma that this is normal, that this is how families treat each other. The security officer shifted uncomfortably, clearly not wanting to be in the middle of this family drama, but also not willing to leave given Brandon's earlier aggression. Brandon threw the papers at my feet. Fine, keep your damn house. We don't need you or your money. I'll get another job, a better job, and we'll buy a place 10 times nicer than that dump in Georgetown. I bent down calmly, picked up the papers and smoothed them out. I genuinely hope you do, Brandon. I hope you get a good job. I hope you learn to support your family. I hope you learn that respect isn't given just because you demand it. But you're going to learn those lessons without using me as your safety net. He turned to Jessica. Come on. We're done here. We'll stay at a hotel until I sort this out. With what money? I asked quietly. Your card is cancelled. The joint account you share with Jessica has about $100 in it. The cash you had stashed in the bedroom safe is still in my house, which you now can't access. So I'll ask again, with what money? The reality of his situation was finally, fully hitting him. He was standing in an airport terminal, unable to board a plane, unable to pay for a hotel, unable to even get back to what he thought of as his home. And he had to crying children and a sobbing wife depending on him to fix it. This is financial abuse. He sputtered. You're using money to control us. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm using my money to stop letting you control me. There's a difference. I watched Brandon's face cycle through rage, denial, fear, and finally something approaching desperation. Jessica had sunk onto a nearby bench, still crying, while Tyler and Emma huddled against her, their excited vacation energy transformed into confused misery. Part of me wanted to scoop up my grandchildren and fix everything, make it all better like I used to do when they were babies. But I knew that would just be enabling the same patterns that had led us here. The security officer's radio crackled with some code I didn't understand. He stepped away to respond, leaving us in tense silence. Brandon was staring at his phone, probably trying to figure out which friend he could call, which remaining credit card might work, how to escape this mess he created. There's a Motel 6 about 3 miles from here, I said quietly, pulling out my wallet. I handed Jessica $100 in cash. That should cover a couple nights while you figure things out. After that, you're on your own. Jessica took the money with shaking hands, not meeting my eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have. Yes, you should have, I agreed, cutting off her apology. You should have stood up for me. You should have told your husband he was out of line. You should have remembered that I'm not just a bank account or a free house or a convenient babysitter. I'm your mother, Jessica. I gave you life. I raised you alone after your father left when you were 7. I worked 2 jobs to put you through college. And this is how you repay that. I know. I'm sorry, stop apologizing and start changing, I said firmly. Words are cheap. I want to see actions. I want to see you stand on your own 2 feet. Get a job. Support your children. Learn to recognize when someone is using you. Brandon opened his mouth, probably to launch into another tirade, but something in my expression must have warned him off. Instead, he grabbed the money from Jessica's hand and started herding his family toward the terminal exit. Before they left, I crouched down to Tyler and Emma's level. They both looked at me with those big, tear-filled eyes that broke my heart into pieces. Grandma loves you both so much, I said softly, pulling them into a hug. This isn't about you, okay? This is grown-up stuff that has nothing to do with how much I love you. But sometimes Grandma has to do hard things to teach important lessons. Are we still going to New York? Tyler asked in a small voice. Not this time, sweetheart. But someday, when you're older, Grandma will take just you and your sister on an amazing trip. Just the 3 of us. Would you like that? They both nodded, clinging to me. Brandon pulled them away roughly. Come on, kids. We're leaving. I stood up and watched my daughter and grandchildren disappear into the crowd, following a man who'd shown his true character today. Part of me wondered if I was being too harsh, if there was another way to handle this. But then I remembered the sound of my boarding pass tearing, the contempt in Brandon's voice, the way Jessica had sided with him instead of me. No, I'd done the right thing. I called an Uber and headed not back to Georgetown, but to the Jefferson Hotel in downtown DC, a boutique luxury property I'd always loved but rarely indulged in. If I wasn't going to New York, I was damn well going to treat myself to something special. I checked into a suite with views of the Washington Monument and ordered room service, filet mignon, lobster tail, a bottle of excellent Cabernet Sauvignon. That night, alone in that beautiful hotel room, I raised a glass to myself. To Margaret Caldwell, who'd finally stopped setting herself on fire to keep other people warm. My phone buzzed constantly. Jessica called 17 times. I let them all go to voicemail. Brandon sent text messages that ranged from apologetic to threatening. I screenshot them all and forwarded them to Harold, then blocked the number. I wasn't interested in anything Brandon had to say unless it came through an attorney. Around 9 p.m., there was a knock at my hotel room door. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing there. My heart jumped. Had something happened to the kids? Ma'am, are you Margaret Caldwell? Yes, that's me. Is everything okay? We have a report that you've illegally evicted your daughter and her family from a Georgetown property. Brandon Mitchell filed a complaint claiming you stolen his vehicle and locked his family out of their home. I invited them in and showed them everything, the property title in my name alone, the loan documents Jessica had signed, the payment history showing 24 months of default, the car title showing me as a sole owner, the bank statements proving I canceled only supplementary cards on my own account. Harold had prepared a packet of documentation anticipating exactly this move. The officers reviewed everything carefully. The older one, a sergeant with gray temples and kind eyes, finally handed the papers back to me. Ma'am, you're well within your rights. This is a civil matter between you and your family, and from what I can see, you've done everything by the book. Mr. Mitchell was pretty aggressive at the station, so we had to come check it out. But this is clearly not a criminal matter. Did he try to break into the house? I asked. He was on the porch making a scene when we arrived. He's lucky we didn't arrest him for disturbing the peace. We told him he needed to contact a lawyer if he wanted to dispute the eviction. He claimed the house was his, but when we asked for documentation, he couldn't produce anything. After the officers left, I poured another glass of wine and stood at the window looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, Brandon was probably still raging, still trying to figure out how to manipulate his way back into my house, my life, my wallet. Jessica was probably crying, caught between loyalty to her husband and guilt about her mother. But I felt something I hadn't felt in years, free. The next morning, I woke to an email from Harold. Brandon had indeed tried to force entry to the Georgetown house around midnight. The new security system had caught it all on video, and the police had issued him a formal warning. One more incident and he'd be arrested for trespassing. I spent the next week at the Jefferson, treating myself to spa days, excellent meals, and peaceful solitude. I visited the National Gallery of Art, something I hadn't done in years. I had lunch with old friends from the Treasury Department who'd been calling me for years, and getting excuses about being too busy. Jessica finally sent me an email instead of calling. It was short. Mom, I understand why you did this. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I want you to know I got a job. It's just administrative work at a law firm, but it's something. The kids miss you. I miss you. Brandon moved out. He's staying with some friend in Baltimore. I'll call you when I'm ready. I love you. 6 months have passed since that day at O'Hare Airport. 6 months since I tore apart my family to save what was left of my dignity. People ask me if I regret it, if the nuclear option was really necessary. They don't understand that sometimes you have to blow everything up to clear ground for something new to grow. Brandon never did get that better job he promised. Last I heard through mutual connections, he's working as an insurance adjuster for a small firm in Baltimore, making just enough to cover rent on a studio apartment and child support payments. The court wasn't particularly sympathetic to a man who couldn't prove he contributed anything financially to his family's welfare for years. Jessica and I talk now, carefully. She's still at that law firm, working her way up from administrative assistant to paralegal. She's taking night classes to finish her degree. The kids are doing okay, all things considered. I see them every other weekend, taking them to museums and parks, teaching them that love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. She asked me recently why I didn't just talk to her first, why I went straight to the nuclear option. I reminded her that I'd been talking for 3 years. I'd been hinting, suggesting, pleading. She chose not to hear me until I spoke in a language she couldn't ignore. Action. The Georgetown house is mine again, all mine. I had it professionally cleaned, removing every trace of Brandon's presence. His garage gym equipment, gone. His tacky man cave decorations, donated. The master bedroom that he'd taken over, redecorated in soft blues and creams, returned to being my sanctuary. I went through with the foreclosure because I had to protect myself legally. Jessica understood, eventually. The financial penalties were steep, but they taught her a lesson about reading what you sign and understanding that borrowed money isn't free money. People in my social circle whispered about me for a while. Did you hear what Margaret did to her own daughter? They'd say, clutching their pearls and judging from the safety of their own intact families. But I noticed something interesting. Several of those same women started pulling me aside at events, asking how I'd done it, confiding their own stories of ungrateful children and manipulative son-in-law. I should feel guilty. Society tells me I should feel terrible about what I did, about how harshly I reacted. A good mother would have forgiven, would have found another way, would have kept the peace at any cost. But I don't feel guilty. I feel lighter than I have in years. The truth nobody wants to say out loud is this: sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love, and sometimes loving them means refusing to be their victim anymore. Brandon thought he could treat me like garbage because I was old, because I was grieving, because I was family and family doesn't fight back. He was wrong on all counts. I'm 66 years old. I spent 30 years making powerful people accountable for their actions. Why should my own family be exempt from those same standards? The vacation to New York never happened. But I went last month, just me, and walked through Central Park in the snow. I saw the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, ate at expensive restaurants, stayed at the plaza. I did it all alone, and it was perfect. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, reclaiming your peace, and refusing to let anyone make you smaller than you are. Tyler and Emma will grow up remembering the year Grandma said no. They'll remember that women don't have to accept disrespect, that love without boundaries is just enabling, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. And someday, when they're older and facing their own difficult decisions, maybe they'll understand why their grandmother tore up more than just a boarding pass that day. She tore up a contract that said she didn't matter. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you. There's more tomorrow. See you there.